Good evening. I'm Anita Chung, Head of Heritage of Daegun. Welcome to Daegun Conversations, a platform for our learning and discussions about up-to-date best practice in heritage planning, conservation, and management for a sustainable future. Tonight, with a full house, I hope you enjoy your evening here as much as we enjoy having you over. Tonight's program is a continuation of the theme of heritage revitalization. Last time we talked about the piers of Walsh Bay on the historic shore of Sydney Harbour and the transformations into a new arts district. This is an example of adaptive reuse of a built heritage for totally new functions. Tonight, the project under discussions is different. It is about the renovation and also the reimagination of the historic landmark building of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. For the past, present, and future, the Philadelphia Museum of Art has its enduring value as a civic and cultural space housing the artistic heritage of all humanity in Philadelphia, the first World Heritage City in America. Joining us live tonight is Mr. Timothy Rupp, the George D. Widener Director and CEO of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Please join me in giving a warm welcome from Hong Kong to our guest speaker, Mr. Timothy Rupp.
Greetings to everyone from the other side of the world. So I've been asked to speak about our facilities master plan, and in order to do so, I should begin with a few framing remarks about the history and nature of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. The museum was founded in 1876, excuse me, on the occasion of the great Centennial Exposition held in Philadelphia. One of the oldest of this country's civic art museums, and therefore it's of great importance in terms of the history of such institutions in the United States. Here you see its first home, Memorial Hall, which was actually built as an art gallery for the exposition and was one of the few permanent structures of that show. The new museum, which opened in 1877, was located on the grounds of the exposition in West Fairmount Park, which you see on the screen now. It was one of the oldest and largest, or it is one of the oldest and largest urban parks in the country. Now, the Pennsylvania Museum and School of Industrial Art, as the museum was first titled, was, like many other museums of the late 19th century, sited away from the city in a park, in a landscaped setting. But it was also too far from the center of the city. And from the very beginning, there were calls to build a larger and better home for the museum on a site that would be either in the city or proper or closer to it. And here you can see a detail of that same map with the location of the present location of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. So it took 50 years actually to accomplish this goal, but eventually the museum did move to a new location, again, still in Fairmount Park, but closer to the city. And in doing so, it assumed a more prominent place as a landmark within a more urbanized setting. We are responsible for a set of 6 buildings, which together comprise more than 1 million square feet. All of them are historically significant, and so we have a special responsibility to care for them as we do for the works of art in our collection. I won't show you all of them, but just a few. Now among these 6 buildings are the Perlman Building, seen on the screen here, one of Philadelphia's earliest and most beautiful Art Deco buildings. These buildings also include the Rodin Museum, designed by one of Philadelphia's most accomplished architects of the 20th century, Paul Kray, to house a collection of the works of Auguste Rodin, donated to the city of Philadelphia by prominent businessman Jules Massenbaum. We manage and care for 2 historic houses in Fairmount Park, both from the 1760s. You see one, Mount Pleasant, here on the screen. We also have, among the 6 buildings, an offsite facility for the storage of our collections. This, a beautiful brick building from the turn of the century in Philadelphia's Navy Yard, now turned to civilian use. But the building that everyone is most familiar with, and the subject of this talk, is our main building, the museum's second home, and at the time of its construction, one of the largest museum buildings in the country. Here's a contemporary view. with the building sited atop a small hill called Fairmount that is the highest point in central Philadelphia. Below it, you see the Schuylkill River and a group of buildings that once served as the city's waterworks, that is a pumping station to provide water for the city. So here's a view of what would later be called the Benjamin Franklin Parkway, again in 1930, just 2 years after the museum opened, with the new museum at the western end of the boulevard. The scheme of this new parkway, was decidedly French in inspiration and a product of what we in the United States call the City Beautiful movement. Note the location of the Perlman building here, completed just 2 years prior, and then the Rodin Museum, completed in the very same year as the date of this photograph. And particularly with the museum and with the Perlman building, note the scale of these buildings, monumental in relation to the 19th century city around it. So here's the question we faced: how do you renew and expand a landmark? The grand building that is the home of the Philadelphia Museum of Art is, as you can see on the screen in this aerial view, U-shaped in plan, embracing a formal courtyard and a grand set of steps on its eastern side. It's clad in a beautiful golden-hued limestone called Kasota stone, quarried in southern Minnesota. And its 4-acre roof is covered with glazed blue terracotta tiles. It sits on a small hill, as I mentioned before, and is one of the most visible and prominent locations in the city. And it is finished in a formal sense on all 4 sides, north, south, east, and west. It has been designated a city and national landmark, and in 2028, it will be 100 years old. Here's a view of a polychrome composite capital of a column on the exterior. It's also a building whose maintenance was neglected for many decades. It has also not been expanded since being completed in 1928. And so when beginning to work on a facilities master plan, we were first and foremost mindful of our responsibilities to be good stewards, as Anita mentioned before, of this great landmark, which largely meant that any changes we proposed to the exterior would have to be minimal and would require governmental approval. It's been a long and very complex process to get to this point, one that began more than 2 decades ago. Initially, a space needs assessment was undertaken with obvious results. We all needed more space for all the functions within the museum. This was, of course, informed largely and principally by the growth of the collection, which now numbers more than 250,000 works of art, and by the increasing need for more education and exhibition space. As you know, a facilities master plan must accommodate and integrate a number of different goals. Here's a list of what we identified as our priorities. The main building would be devoted to public-facing functions. That is to say, most back-of-house activities would, if possible, be shifted to other buildings. More space was needed for the display of a growing collection and for special exhibitions, and this need was deemed to be critical. In point of fact, our facilities master plan, when completed, will increase our gallery space by nearly 50%. Further, and this is an important point for those who work in buildings like ours, the various functions in the building needed to be reorganized and placed in proper relations to each other. In other words, it needed to be rezoned in some ways. We also recognized that our building is fundamentally a Beaux-Arts building, the plan of which is organized around long view corridors and axes that intersect at right angles. The restoration of its axial logic, we felt, would make it easier for visitors to understand and to navigate. Further, both our visitor amenities, bathrooms, public areas, dining facilities, and so on, as well as our building systems were aging and in many cases obsolete. Simply put, these would need to be upgraded or replaced. And finally, again, to make this point and underscore it, we also had to respect the landmark designation of this building and honor its historical character and integrity as we considered what changes we would make. Now we turn to this man, Frank Gehry, and his staff to do this work. on the basis of none of what he has done in buildings like Bilbao or the Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles, but rather on the basis of his sensitive remodeling of the interiors of the Norton Simon Museum in Pasadena, California, about 20 years ago in 1999, a project that proved that he could exercise a light touch with an existing building, and that he was first and foremost an excellent planner. And that has been our experience of working with him at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Now, the building which is landmarked, as I mentioned, is also set on top of a hill. And it cannot be added to in conventional ways. That is to say, by simply building an addition next to it. And so Gehry's design anticipates little change on the exterior. Here on the west side, we will create a new pedestrian plaza, eventually, not yet, at the entrance, and two landscaped islands here and here. Similarly, on the east side, which faces the city, this view of the master plan, after it is finished, will entail few changes on the exterior as well. Perhaps most significant of these are a new loading dock, again bermed into the side of the hill here, and an art handling facility, this again already constructed, and two stair towers here and here, both required by code that we chose to keep outside the footprint of the building rather than demolish galleries on the interior to accommodate them. First, you should note that the building is built not only on the top of the hill, but also into it, with the lowest floor being at the base of the hill or the street level. As you can see, there are three levels, here, here, and here, including 2 floors of galleries above the level of the East Terrace. And then there are 3 below, so 6 floors altogether. The pavilion at the center of the museum, of which you see a section here, also contains our principal public interiors and vertical circulation paths. The Great Stair Hall, which rises 3 stories from bottom to top. Lenfest Hall here on the west, 2 entrances, one on the east and one on the west, and formal staircases here leading up from this space to the Great Stair Hall. Now, one of the principal objectives of our facilities master plan is to extend public circulation down to the lowest level of the museum and to create a pathway to the new galleries that will eventually be built underneath the East Terrace, and I'll speak about those in a few minutes. Our facilities master plan also calls for the renovation of public spaces and galleries throughout the museum and the capturing of new space, even up here in the attic. Listed on this slide are the key objectives of this phase of our facilities master plan. It is, as you will see in a moment, an enabling project in the sense that it accomplished a number of things that were essentially prerequisites for future phases of our master plan. These include replacing and expanding the capacity of our building systems, electrical, air circulation, life safety, and so on, reorganizing public circulation at the center of the building, and getting a start on expanding our gallery space. Now, to return to the core project, much of its cost was in infrastructure, in replacing old and inefficient air handlers, electrical switchgear, and fire and life safety systems. Here you see the level which houses our equipment rooms being demolished about 4 years ago. The architects in the room will understand one of the challenges we faced in working on the core project because we didn't have a set of as-built drawings for the building. Thus, we encountered many surprises along the way, such as irregular foundations under columns and uneven foundations or bedrock below. And here you can see the same space renovated and installed with new and more energy efficient equipment. As I noted earlier, much of the work on the core project was focused on reorganizing and converting the first floor of the museum, or level 1 as we now call it, to other purposes, essentially rezoning it for public functions. Hence, section 2, the area marked in green on this plan, was earmarked for new dining facilities. And here are two views of this space. The first, a central corridor leading to our new museum cafe. And the second, a view of our new restaurant, designed by Gehry Partners, which is one of the new spaces in the museum that will look familiar to those who know Frank Gehry's work. Now, perhaps the most complex set of challenges that we faced with this project were in section 4, the museum's central pavilion right here. This was closed for nearly 2 years to accommodate a significant amount of work, some of it transformational, some of it focused on renewal and preservation. The West Terrace, where you see the arrow, one of the principal entrances to the museum, had in essence to be rebuilt. The first of a group of before and after animations I'm going to show you. This involved removing the central desk designed by Robert Venturi several decades ago to open the room up, the cleaning of the stone walls and columns, the replacement of the old coffered ceiling with a new one with integrated LED lighting, which you can see at the top of this image, and the opening of the space containing the staircases that led up to the Great Stair Hall. Now, beyond Lenfest Hall, this space, we get to the very heart of the project. This area, circled on the screen here, provides access to the upper floors of the museum as well as to the north and south wing. It was also needed for vertical circulation to provide access to the ground level of the museum, as you will see, to the future galleries underneath the East Terrace. In this animation, Lenfest Hall, the great entrance hall to the west, is at the far end of the image, and that the two arches in the foreground lead into the vaulted walkway, a space on the ground floor that I will show you in a few moments. Now, this wasn't easy to do, removing the auditorium and opening the space up. Here you see the demolition of the auditorium in process. And it was difficult enough, but to start with, but made even more difficult because it occurred, or this is taking place right at the center of the building when it still remained open to the public. And here you see it before. So the old stairs, a wall that visitors encountered and had to walk around, behind which is the auditorium. And here's how this space looks today. And here's a view into the forum at the balcony level, with its ceiling here that curves subtly in two different directions, and several views of the staircase, which you saw at the outset of my talk, located in the final design at the west end of this space, so that it is close to the staircases leading up to the Great Stair Hall. Here the stairs seen from the east opens up views across the entire breadth of the central section of the museum and provides a sense of clarity and orientation that simply didn't exist before. And here's a view of this entrance, which was completed in late 2018 and open to the public then. So a third entrance to the museum. Now this entrance leads into a large lobby clad in Casota stone and dominated by 4 fluted door columns. It's hard to imagine that this was once, and at the same time, both a loading dock and a public entrance, but so it was. Today it has been restored as a public entrance. The arch on the left, so the vaulted walkway is here. It's one of the great curiosities of the museum. Here's the north entrance, so it leads right into this vaulted walkway. And it is one of the great curiosities of the museum. It's now bisected by the forum here, as you can see on this plan. But it is, from beginning to end, from here to here, 640 feet long, stretching the entire width of the museum from north to south. So here's, again, that before and after animation, showing how it has been renovated and restored as a public space. So why renovate this space and make it accessible, once again, to the public? With its twin arcades, one of which you see here, of 8 arches each, the vaulted walkway will serve as an elegant and impressive threshold into these new galleries, here rendered just beyond the arches. The master plan will increase our gallery space by nearly 50%, and this without building an addition on the exterior. On this plan, you can see it clearly how the forum and the vaulted walkway will serve as a threshold to these new galleries, which will be devoted to contemporary art and to special exhibitions. This is the one space because in the museum, because it stands outside of its historical footprint, where the sense of scale and architectural expression can be different and completely of the 21st century. Hence, these will be the tallest galleries in the museum, ranging in height between 24 and 28 feet. They will also be the most open and monumental in scale, unified by a distinctive shape of the ceiling, which you can see here is a saddleback arch. And they will be the most light-filled, starting with the oculus in the fountain at the center of the East Terrace and continuing with light from the sunken gardens at the center of the from the sunken gardens at each end of the cross axis, with skylights just beyond the vaulted walkway and each of the 4 main galleries. And if we wish, and can persuade city officials of the wisdom of such a step, we can even put a window in the steps at the end of the central axis, opening up a view down the Benjamin Franklin Parkway here, with the tower of Philadelphia City Hall in the distance. Now, this has been a controversial suggestion because it would alter, here you see them in a model, the so-called Rocky Steps, one of the city's most popular tourist destinations. In any event, it's a decision that will not have to be made for some time yet.
Maybe I would like to explain a bit because I see that there's some very young people in the audience. The stone steps leading to the east entrance of the Philadelphia Museum of Art has been known the Rocky Steps is because of a scene in the film Rocky, played by Sylvester Stallone. It was a film released in the 70s. And I found that this is a very, very interesting intervention of the Rocky Steps. I mean, as you say, you probably need to seek government approval. And now we can see the rationale for this proposal because it really increased the space for art. But would you anticipate some opinions against it? Or, for example, when you have to lead a project like that, how to make important decisions about the balance between past, present, and future for this kind of project? And here, for example, the steps, I mean, people may have some attachments, emotional attachments to it. So how do you deal with that kind of situations?
You have to have a strong chin if you're going to lead with it. Because if you even propose something like this as an option, somebody is going to object. In point of fact, when we first showed this model in 2013, saying we could have this window where we could not. We could do either option. You can't imagine the comments we got. Some of them very, very pointed. Don't mess with our great steps, and you can't do that. It would be iconoclastic. And then we also had a lot of people say, "This is really great. Make the change." It shows Philadelphia moving forward, and it shows Philadelphia willing to transform itself. In point of fact, when a blogger in 2013, when we first published this design, wrote a rather critical article about it, but he also conducted a survey of his readers about whether they would favor this or not. And in point of fact, about 54% of his readers said, "We love the idea, let's go ahead and do it." So as usual, opinion is split. And the point is this will not have to be decided for a very long time. And why not think imaginatively about how things could be different at this point? Mm-hmm. Now, no matter what happens with the Rocky Steps, and here's a view without the city window, and no matter how long it takes to complete the master plan, when it is done, the museum will be profoundly altered, but it will also look, as you can see in this aerial view from the East, it will also look and feel very much as it always has. And that, I believe, is the essence of good stewardship. The point of this image is not simply to say it's about the art, but it's also about a legacy, about sharing, handing this off to a younger generation. Here are 3 interns who worked at the museum a few summers ago doing this demonstration with sparklers on the terrace. It's a legacy. It's really for them. It's for the future. And I think of all things, that's the thing that drives me most. So Anita, I'm going to stop there, and I hope I didn't take too long.
Well, thank you so much. It's such a wonderful presentation.